G'day, Ben from Duck Playing Chicken here with the next video in this build series of the Bandai SD Macross Valkyrie Special Set number 2. As you can see here, I've got everything primed in grey, and this is just one of the kits. This is Maximilian's VF1J, but they've all been painted the same way. They've all been primed in grey, and I have spent a good 25 hours sanding, cleaning seams, and just trying to get this looking the best I can. So I'm going to show you some example pieces that were particularly problematic. The first one is the fuselage, and there is a seam that runs sort of all along the side here. Now it's maybe a little bit hard to see, there's like a slight shadow of it that you can still see there, but given this will be there's going to be a decal go here, I don't think it's going to actually be that noticeable, but it just, you know, it's like sand, and then prime, and then sand again, and then prime again, sand, prime, yeah, so on and so forth. So I'm sort of getting to the point now where I'm a bit over sanding and priming everything. So if we look at sort of the head part here, this hasn't come up too bad, you know, given that that was two halves down the center there. There's very little sort of sign of the seam, so I'm pretty happy with that. Now the canopies are kind of interesting. So this is the one without the skull and crossbones, and you can see there's a slight sort of dimple in the middle there, and what that is that's putty, because there's a sink mark where one of the pegs was. So I've had to sort of fill that. Now you can see a slight shadow of that bump there, but that's actually just because the primer is pretty thin. The one that's actually got the skull and crossbones in it, there's still just the faintest hint of that panel line in there, the skull and crossbones, but I don't think that's actually going to be a problem once I've sort of painted up, got a decal over it. Now the arms, again, two halves put together. I'm reasonably happy with these. There's sort of very little sign of the seam that goes down the middle of them. So it's just tricky cleaning up all these little bits sort of in the deep crevices here are always problematic. And the leg parts, there's this sort of issue up here that I've had to fill, and again it's sort of sand, fill, prime, sand, fill, prime. A lot of the other pieces, they didn't need much cleanup. They were sort of just pretty much, you know, if there was any mold lines or you know, nub marks, that sort of stuff. So the rest of it was sort of pretty straightforward. And most of the time was sort of spent on any of the parts where it was two halves joined together. Okay, so the next step is to start looking at paint colours, so I can actually get some colour on these pieces. I've started the painting process, and I've started off with the cameras or the eyes on the heads. And so what I've gone for is sort of a metallic green. And to get that, I started off with some metallic aluminium by SMS, and then over the top of it I used some clear green. And so I've done that for all of the heads and the smaller versions, and then I put a gloss coat over the top of them, so that's why they're nice and shiny. And so what I'll do is I'll mask that off before I get on to the next stage of painting the heads. Now for the fast packs, I have painted the nozzles on the back, and so for that I used SMS metallic gunmetal, and the rest of the main bit of the booster packs will be in sort of a blue colour, and for that I'm going to be using Aggressor Blue. So I'll mask off these areas around here and then paint the rest of it. As far as the logos that go here, I think I will end up using the stickers, believe it or not, and I'll talk about that when I sort of get to them. So there's a few sort of details that I'll hand paint, but basically it's going to be the nozzle colour and the rest of it in blue. For the canopy, I've painted these up, so this is just for the glass bit. And for that I used SMS Steel, and then I put a gloss coat over it using SMS Clear Gloss. So now again I can mask off those glass bits, and the rest of the frame I'll just paint that in black. While I had the metallic gunmetal out, I did a couple of other sort of detail bits painted up. So these are the missile packs. The actual ends of the missiles I will hand paint, but basically the body of the shell is in the gunmetal. All the feet parts are now painted in gunmetal. This is the other side of this one. You can still see a little bit of an indication of where I've filled these in on the other side, but it's not too bad. This will be on the inside of the legs, so you're not actually going to see it that much. All the landing gear pieces I've also painted in the gunmetal, because I will be brush painting the tyres on the wheels. 6 hours of masking and still going. There is a lot of masking in this kit. Now, while I continue to do it, I want to point out some of the methods that I sort of use for masking. It's predominantly using Tamiya masking tape, but there's some things that I sort of always have struggled with in the past, and the canopy is probably a really good place to start. The reason for that is because it is a compound curve, and Tamiya tape doesn't stretch particularly well over a compound curve. So where you've got something like this, I tend to find it works to do it in 2 halves. And so if I take, this is the 18mm width tape, so I'm going to take a piece of this, and I'm going to start by lining it up to one of the panel lines that are already there. So why do any more cuts than you have to? And then I'll just sort of lightly press it in place, and then I'll start following the panel lines around with a toothpick. And when you get to sort of about halfway, that's where the tape will start sort of buckling in on itself, because you're talking about a pretty major sort of compound curve. So it's about that point where I will actually cut the tape and then start on the other side. So one of the problems that I have is where you've got it sort of really buckling, it's hard to get a really nice clean cut. So I find that this method works for me anyway. May not work for you. Take my Tamiya decal scissors here, which is sort of perfect for getting in nice and close. And just roughly sort of cut it. Now I can always go in and trim it. Here. So I'm going to bed down that tape into that panel line as best as possible, because that's what I'm going to be using to guide my scope. Okay, so you can sort of see where all this buckling is happening. You really don't want that sort of occurring where you've got a panel line. So now I'll go in. This is larger tape. It is a little bit wasteful doing it this way, but I've tried sort of going across the other way and sort of just using one bit of tape all together, and I found that this gives me the best results. Again, just sort of following that panel line around as best as possible. And then where it starts to meet the other half of the tape on the other side, that's where you start doing some trimming. And I apologise, I'm getting tape everywhere here. So one thing with Tamiya tape, it always seems to stick to things when you don't want it to. Now, of course, the reason I'm masking the canopy in the first place is because I've sort of done the silver or the steel coat and the gloss coat, and now I want to do the frame that goes around it. Okay, so we're getting very close now. Okay, so that's a sort of starting point. Just sort of going around, just making sure the tape is bedded down really well. Just going to guide the knife, and for cutting I'm going to be using a what's this, number 11 blade. So just gently sort of following the lines. The knife to do all the work. You shouldn't be pressing hard at all. This one on the edge here, very close to the end of the canopy. Now, hopefully, I can carefully lift this off. There we have it. So now I'll go and paint that frame black. And of course underneath we'll have the silvered glass look. I tend to find, doing it down to halves like that makes it a little bit easier. There is also on these packs that go on the arms, there is this white piece on the front, so I've painted that just SMS white. And now I want to mask that so I can paint the rest of it. So for that, take a length of tape, and what I want to do is sort of get it in the gap, behind there, and then I want to use my tweezers to kind of fold it over. And of course this is easier said than done. But basically get it down the other side like that. And what I can do is pull from the other side. And I'll close up the tape like so. And just cut off the excess. So I was actually considering sort of hand painting these white, but the masking of them is pretty straightforward, so I've found this is definitely an easier method. Alright, for the head I've done the sort of aluminium and then the clear green over the top. The heads all have different colour surround around the sort of camera. So the first bit is for me to sort of mask off the camera piece. And this one's pretty straightforward. It's basically follow the contours of the glass piece, the camera lens or eye or whatever it's called in Canon. Just going to sort of bit it down a little bit. And I want to press it into the edges because it is inset. Then I will take the blade. And again, I just want to press that tape in again. And there we have it. Okay, so now I can do the surround, I'll mask that off and then continue painting. And this is where all the time consuming work comes in, because it's basically paint an area, mask, paint an area, mask, so on and so forth. The other one that's a little bit tricky, well, there's actually a few that are tricky, but the other one that I'll sort of show you the way I went around it is masking these thruster bells on the fast packs. So for that, I use my Infini masking tape cutting board. And I've just cut a series of strips of tape here that are it's reasonably long. And once again, because you're doing it on a compound curve, the masking tape won't actually sort of follow the lines you want to mask off particularly well. So I can start off with just the first piece. So tuck that in, and I can keep going around. I find that this is reasonably straightforward. It actually works reasonably well. So you don't have to use an excessive number of pieces. I mean, I know, I've done masking jobs before where you're using lots and lots of tiny little pieces, just to get it right. This is a bit of a happy medium. And of course, this is the gunmetal that I painted the thruster bells in. Alright, so you can sort of see that's done around the edge there. There's this sort of tiny bit up here. It's a bit tricky to sort of mask, so for that I'll just use a smaller piece of tape to get in there. And I will just get that stuck in place. And using the tweezers, fold it over, try to jam it in there as best as possible. And then I'll take a scalpel and gently cut the tape. So that way at least I know that the lip of the thruster bell will be reasonably well masked all the way around. Okay. And the last thing that I'll do is, in order to sort of mask up the middle of it, I'll just take a glob of blue tack and just put that in there. Sort of helps to hold the tape in place a little bit too. So there we go. So a couple other sort of troublesome masking points. The legs, this is for the Milia Genius's Valkyrie, and it's sort of red and white, and I've masked off the white area, but it's just a little bit fiddly. In most cases you can just follow the panel lines with your knife. The other thing to note is, again, might help if I sort of show. So that's the one I'm painting here. Now, most of it you can see is red, but there's actually two UN Spacey logos that go on the side here. Now, I'd prefer not to use this. There was indented lines in there, panel lines that I've sort of filled in because it was going to be too hard to sort of hand paint. I think I did last time, if I remember rightly. So what I've done is I've made some tiny circular masks. So there'll be a white dot there, and then I can use my homemade decals, which I will show you when I get to decaling, that I can put over the top there. Also masked off the nose. Now for the nose, again, compound curve, but for that I use, this is a think it's Nito make it. Nito tape. And this is a bit more flexible. It's still like creases, but it works pretty well. So I'll use that to create my nice smooth line around the edge, and then the rest will be Tamiya tape. This stuff is a little bit thick for my liking, but it does have a bit of give in it, like a bit of stretch. So it's not too bad. And of course there's a little bit of white that needs to be masked off here. So now I can sort of throw the red over it, and that'll be basically that cockpit sort of done for that particular Valkyrie. Now for the VF1S and 1A, you can see the little devices here where they've got the red triangle and the black mark on the shoulders. And they do give you stickers for this, but they only give you sort of a sticker for the front sides, I guess, of the shoulders. So it's a little bit disappointing. So what I'm going to do is I've painted the red. Now I've masked that off just by cutting that little triangle out. Next I'll do the black and then mask that off, and then the rest will be painted white. I think there's a black stripe on the arm here, which I'll paint as well. So yeah, again, it's just about sort of getting some paint down, masking, paint again, bit more masking, so on and so forth. Okay, I still have a lot of masking to do before I sort of get painting again. Time for some unmasking. Now if we have a look at this one here, I'm going to take the existing masking off, which underneath it is white, but there'll be some additional masking that needs to happen on these lines that go across the surface. So let's take this off first, see how you can already see I've had a little bit of bleed in the white. Yeah, looks like I've had a fair bit of bleed on the white, but I'm going to show you how I'm going to deal with that. Okay. Alright, so see I've got these little bits of white, little bits of red here. I'm going to take a little bit of XF2 flat white, which is enamel paint. This stuff's really opaque, so of course covering red with white is notoriously difficult, and I can't just use the SMS paints that I use because they don't brush paint particularly well, and nor do I really want to sort of mask everything up and do it again. Could probably do with a little bit more touch up, but you get the idea. So that's how I sort of clean up those little bits of masking that are problematic. Okay, now the legs on these kits are probably the most complicated parts as far as masking goes. So I've done the initial part of the masking, and look, painting these things is a bit difficult because the call outs are pretty limited. Like it's hard to sort of see some areas how they're actually painted, but nonetheless you can see sort of on on Middle Ear's Valkyrie here, there's like a white part on the front of the leg. So I've masked that off, and before I get into the next phase of masking, I want to see how this went. Alright, so that did not go particularly well. You can see there's some serious touch-up work I have to do there. The sides aren't too bad. Okay, so got a bit of touch up to do, and then I can start up the next round of masking, but you kind of get an idea of how that's going to look. And of course once panel lines go in there as well, they tend to sort of clean up the edges a bit more. So but yeah, pretty rough. It's just the nature of the piece, really quite difficult to sort of mask up properly, but that's alright. Nothing that a bit of XF2 won't fix. Time to talk about some of the other colours that I'm using for these kits. So for the red, I forgot to mention that I'm using just SMS red, so a nice easy one there. For the blue, For Maximilian's Valkyrie, I'm actually using Outlaw paints, bright blue. So this stuff is again another lacquer paint that's sort of airbrush ready. And for the yellow, I'm using SMS School Bus Yellow. Things like wherever I use black, so for example around the edges of the canopy there, I'm just using Surfacer Black for that purpose. Time to do some unmasking on the head, and it gives me an opportunity to talk about a couple of last colours that I've sort of used. So the heads required a little bit of masking just because there's sort of obviously multiple colours, and it's like the white, so what I call a GT stripe down along the top of the head. There's also some white underneath the, I guess, the chin sort of area. Okay, so you sort of see, yeah, underneath the camera area. And then around the camera, or the eye, or face glass, mask, whatever you want to call it, I've actually used a light grey. So I'll take that off. So you can see there's that sort of colour delineation between the white and the light grey, and for that I've used SMS AN grey. Now I still have the green metallic look of the camera piece covered, and I'm going to keep that masked because I need to give it all a gloss coat to do the panel line wash, and then I'll do a flat coat over the top of that. So I want to leave the glass piece covered for now, masked. Have a look at this one. I've got the red parts, the red arrows on the side of the head. So I'll mask those. And again, sort of that, you know, multiple colours, so paint a bit, mask, paint a bit, mask. Ad infinitum. Now, according to the instructions for the VF1A Super Valkyrie, the surround and the camera piece is like a dark metallic colour. So when I finally get the tape off, you'll be able to see what that looks like. Okay, and again, I've got the masking in there for the camera glass, which I won't be taking off just yet. But yeah, for the surround, I've just used SMS gunmetal. So if you have a look at the instructions here, you know, you can see the sort of similar colour to the gun that they've sort of represented, and sort of a dark metallic there. Whereas for Maximilian's and Milia's Super Valkyries, you see it's sort of a light grey colour, so that's what I've gone with. Alright, so now these are ready for a gloss coat, but I still have a lot more painting to do. So I've been continuing the painting process and lots of masking. So I want to take you through just a little bit of the unmasking, and as you can see there's quite a bit of tape on here. Now I've had to do it in multiple, I guess, rounds of masking. So as I've said before, it's sort of apply a coat of paint, mask, apply a coat of paint, mask, etc, etc. So you'll see as I unpeel the masking on this one, you can see there's sort of multiple layers of masking that I've done on it. Now this bit involves three colours. You've basically got the blue for the midsection of the arm, and you have white for the hands and the shoulder, and then you have red for the little triangle details on the shoulders. So it's just really about sort of working out the order in which things need to be painted. Now, I don't expect this masking to be perfect, that's for sure. It is incredibly difficult to mask a lot of these pieces just because of the nature of the shapes, the geometry of the shapes. There's a lot of sort of compound curves, a lot of sort of difficult edges to go right up to with the masking. So I do expect a bit of paint bleed. Now, I'm not really that fussed on this. I've been spending a lot of time on this kit, so I'm sort of at the point where, you know, I can live with a few bits of overspray. Anything major I'll fix up, but there's sort of minor bits. And some of it will, you know, disappear once I put a panel line wash on there. So you can sort of see there, it hasn't come up too bad, but there's a little bit of overspray in the gaps there, which, you know, once I put a panel line wash in there, some of that will sort of disappear. You know, but that one's not too bad. Now, if we have a look at one of these side pieces, these, the side pieces of the legs and the legs themselves are probably the most complex as far as the masking of the VF1Js, just because there's sort of multiple colours. So you've got sort of accents, a red accent on these, as well as sort of yellow circle. You've got black. You know, it's lots going on a reasonably small piece. Hang on. Ooh, just discovered I haven't put the yellow down on that. Actually, there's a reason why it's not yellow on it, and that's because it's actually for milliards, so this should be the white dot. But you can see there's sort of, you know, you got black, red, white, blue, and you got multiple colours there. If we have a look at Max's one, of course it has the yellow there. Now, this is where there's a mistake. The blue should be on the white a bit. So if we have a look at the difference between these two, you can see for the blue one, I've done the opposite of what I should have done. Part of that is because of what they had on the instructions. You know, I sort of followed the instructions here, but looking at other reference material, that's actually not right. So I need to fix it up. Now, if we have a look at the legs, these are probably the biggest pain in the neck, just because lots of different colours, really some quite difficult areas to mask really well. We've got the added bonus of sort of the metallic colour for the foot and also for the intakes. So just every colour you add in the masking process just adds a sort of another level of complexity, and also another area where potentially overspray or bleed can sort of occur. You can see how much tape I've sort of used, you know, on this process. And you know, I've said it before, I'll say it again, using lacquers, I find lacquer paint a lot harder than water-based acrylics, which of course makes sense. But I very rarely have any issues with paint lift after masking this stuff. And even, you know, I'll spray a colour down, maybe give it half an hour, and then it's ready to mask. Touch wood, I haven't found any issues with it lifting even after given such a short amount of time to dry. Trying to work out which is the top layer of the tape to take off. There we go. So you can see I've had a bit of a mishap with the blue over the yellow. Not a major deal, but the other thing that makes this one a little bit tricky is the detail lines, the sort of accent lines, because they have panel lines across this part but not across the front. So just a little bit trickier to sort of paint up. So I've still got, you know, some unmasking to do. I'm nearly done with the painting for the VF1Js. The two of these are going to have some challenges, more specifically around the chest plate here. But the rest of it should be reasonably straightforward, a lot more straightforward than these other two here. So I've got plenty of work to do still. I want to show you a masking technique I use for these little black accents on the shoulder here. So I've already sort of done the black and the red, but what I want to do is create a mask to cover up the black area on the shoulder so that I can paint the rest of this white. So I just want to quickly show you how I do that. And what I use is the stickers as a template. So given that for the shoulders I actually need 4 masks for this particular side of the shoulder. So what I'm going to do is take my Tamiya masking tape and I'm going to create a couple of layers, so that way I sort of only need to cut it once. So layers down here. Another layer, and I'm just going to offset it just a little bit, and you'll sort of see why I do it like that. It doesn't have to be super accurate, but this is really just so that I can basically cut once and create all the masks that I need in one go. Okay, so I've got my layers there, and I'm going to take the sticker check that is the right one. Yes, it is. And I'm going to place it like that. Now I'm going to take my scalpel and trace around it. What I've done is I've actually left this bit here not yet cut. I'm just going to take the first layer off. And I'm going to try and work off the sticker because I don't actually need that. So I can see by the back of it that it is indeed hasn't lifted any of the tape. I'm just going to put that back on the sticker sheet just in case I need it again. Alright, so let's have a look at, take this tape off. Alright, so now I can lift up one of these. And yes, this side here is going to be too long, but that's alright because I can trim it once it's in place. So now I can position it. Where I want it. I've just noticed I've actually picked up 2. Do is just make sure I'm getting one at a time.
can position it. The cut wasn't that accurate on this. So I've got this little sort of dag bit here. I think I might just trim that. There we go, that's better. And then lift this bit up. And I can trim that to size. There we go. We have mask there, ready to go. And because I've sort of cut them all out of the same template, they're going to be consistent as far as the shape they are. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of them. I've sort of already done the other side, so I'll go ahead and do the other arms or the shoulders that I haven't yet masked. So I've done all the base painting, and it has taken over 70 hours. So there's been a lot of masking, and I was probably a little bit too ambitious to try and get all 4 done at once. But anyway, that's where we are. Just a couple of things to point out, just to sort of show you how the masking worked out on these shoulders. It didn't come up too bad. Looking at the stickers are actually oversized, so keep that in mind. If you're going to use the stickers, they're sort of they're not at the exactly right size to just put on nice and cleanly, I don't think. But anyway, the next step is to obviously give everything a gloss coat, ready for a panel line wash and decals. But that's all going to happen in the next episode, so I'm going to leave this video here. So, till then, I'll catch you later.